Society publicizes and promotes sex, but we don't actually talk about it. Berks Teens Matter is here to change that. Although the national rate of teen births has significantly decreased, it is still a pressing issue within our own community. Reading's teen birth rate is 2.5 times higher than Pennsylvania's. Our goal is to reduce teen pregnancy by 40% in Berks County by 2022. In order to reach this goal, we must first reduce the stigma surrounding sex. Our second Let's Talk video features Sergeant Luz Shade of the Reading Police Department. It's time to have the talk. How did you first learn about sex?
So I had questions at a very young age, starting as early as 9 years old. But the answers were not necessarily always there. I have an older sister, she's 4 years older, so a lot of my questions were answered by my older sister, which was great to have because I felt that I can confide in her, and she felt the same way, that she can tell me things that were maybe taboo in our society, but her and I could have a talk about it.
Who first started the conversation about sex in your family?
I think I probably initiated it just because of curiosity. When you're young, there's a lot of unknowns, and there's certain things you want to know. I mean, you see things in movies, you see things on TV that you're like, okay, well, what's this about?
Was it awkward to talk to your parents about sex?
Oh, absolutely, it was weird for them. I mean, I'm their young child. How dare I speak of this type of thing? But they answered any type of questions I had very at my level. I could tell they were uncomfortable with it, but they tried their best to do what they could do with what they had, with the knowledge that they had at the time.
What is a good age to start having the conversation?
I think ever since, you're young, it's just never too early to start. Now, keep in mind, we have to keep it at age-appropriate levels. So when a child comes to you with questions about sex or anything sex-related, I think it's important that you answer them in a manner that they are going to understand.
You have one 15-year-old boy. Have you had the talk with him?
So I knew very early on that when my child came to me when he was curious about things, I was going to answer him and I was going to respond to any of his questions in an age-appropriate manner. And I would never hide anything from him because I wanted him to be educated. Today, we have an open dialogue about sex. However, he is more bashful. I'm the open one. I'm okay with talking about it because it's just a natural part of life. I wasn't going to keep information from him. I wasn't necessarily going to volunteer information that he's not asking, but I will, if he had questions, I would answer them. And because we had such an open dialogue about sex from ever since he was little, or about the anatomy or anything of the sort, we were always comfortable. So I'd rather him be educated and knowledgeable about the subject than not know what's going on and being surprised later on in life.
How do you feel when your son does come to you to talk about sex?
So I'm very proud as a parent that I know that I've been able to talk to my child as he's growing up, and he's willing to come to me with certain things. So I'm proud to know that, okay, we're good. We can talk about this and it's not awkward.
What do you think is a father's best way to communicate to their daughters about sex?
That's a tough one. Because I'm sure daddies look at their little girls. That's my little girl, that's not necessarily a subject many times that parents want to have with their child. So from a father to a daughter, I think the best thing to do is be open and be real, because it's just reality. It's a fact of life. It's going to happen sooner or later, rather later. But I think it's the best thing to do is to be open with your child, regardless of the gender, whether it's father to daughter, mother to son, regardless. It's just best to be open.
What is a common misconception kids have about sex?
I think not necessarily a misconception, but they don't think it could happen to them as far as, let's say, having sex and getting pregnant. Sometimes they think, well, you know what, that just happens to the other person. That's what, from my experience with working with pregnant and parenting teenagers before I became a police officer, that's what I gathered sometimes from the talks that I had with some of my students, that they just didn't think it would necessarily happen to them because they thought they were taking the proper precautions.
What is one misconception about sex that you thought was true when you were younger?
That you couldn't get pregnant while you had your period. That was a big one.
Do you think the teen birth rate is a problem in Reading?
I think it can potentially be a problem if we do not get it under control. I mean, when I say under control, I'm talking about education. Teaching our youth that it can happen. It can happen to anyone. And teaching them what's the best way to not get pregnant, which we know it's to not have sex. That's not the reality, unfortunately. So the best thing to do is educate.
Follow us on social media to stay informed and view all the videos from our Let's Talk series, which will continue to debut throughout the month of October.